Hi everyone, this is Kyle with K-Debate. I haven't made a video in a long time, but I wanted to make one on something. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and it was about the election, the United States presidential election. It's both candidates have been nominated by their parties. There's a couple of third-party candidates that have been talking about things, but generally they're in less than 15% in any of the polls. So um, the two big ones, Hillary, Trump, and I was talking to them about just what it was like because their parents, very very conservative, love Donald Trump. They themselves are much more liberal. They don't like Trump, and I was talking to them about just the pros and cons of what the things have been happening. Like, what do these things mean? Like, what do the things that they're saying actually mean? Because a lot of the things they say aren't exactly clear, and you have to interpret them through what they're coming from, where they're coming from. So you hear somebody say they want to fix immigration, or they want to fix the deficit, or they want to fix whatever their platform is based off of their party. It's a very different thing. So if you say, yeah, I'm interested in them fixing the immigration problem. If you're on the Republican side, that means making it harder for them to come in. Maybe do something about the refugees and make them go somewhere else. Where if it's the Democratic Party, you might think, well, fixing the immigration problem might be figuring out how to vet them faster, or figure out how to be more welcoming or less discrimination, stuff like that. So the things they say need to be interpreted through what they're coming from, where they're coming from. But the specifics of what I talked about with my friend was the two candidates, the two main candidates, Republican and Democratic nominations, and they said if they were going to vote, which I don't think they are, if they were going to vote, they were going to vote for Trump. And when I asked them why, because they don't like Trump, they said because they cannot support Hillary, period. They will not. She's evil. She's a crook. She's a liar. And I pointed out that's not really voting for Trump then. That's voting against Hillary. And if you believed that somebody else would win, you would vote for them instead of Trump. And he's like, yeah, of course, but no one else is going to win. And so their idea is they don't want Trump to win. They just don't want Hillary to win. And I was watching a couple of news articles. I was reading a couple of news articles, watching a couple of videos on the new data that's been coming out related to who voted and why in the primaries and all the different polls that have been going out. And very few people, compared to most elections, are actually voting for somebody. They're voting against somebody. I think the latest number I saw was 59% and 54%. I don't remember which one got which, but it was their votes are from people that are voting against the other candidates. So it's more than 50% on both. So there's more people that don't want one person to get in than actually wants the other person to get in. So um, when I see those numbers, and I see because they asked me who I would vote for, and I don't like the idea of picking between the lesser of two evils. And I explained to them Hillary is status quo. She has the same problems that have been perpetuated through government. Is that it's very easy to be just kind of not quelled. It's the wrong word, but we've become numb to the ideas that corruption is just there, and people can say one thing and do another, and people really won't care 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when people are still in office. You promised to do this. It was like, well, yeah, but that was a long time ago, and things changed. So you have all these promises that are being made that aren't going to be kept, and so you have Hillary that's that status quo. It's just going to continue on, and people don't like that. And then you have Donald Trump, who has had something along the lines of a scandal, whatever the media wants to call a scandal. He's been in the news every single day for something for the past week. And it hasn't been small, it's been pretty big stuff. And I don't support either candidate. I don't support, like, a long time ago when Obama was running, and they were trying to figure out if Hillary or Obama were going to be nominated. And I'm like, well, I know Hillary. I know of her. I don't know who Obama is. And this was back when he was first running. I didn't know anything about him. But then as I learned more about it, I was like, well, I know Hillary, but the things that Obama is saying sound more reasonable. They sound a little bit more um, like they care instead of just, I'm saying these things, which is the standard. So I thought he was being more honest. I thought he was being more credible, and so I had my support for him. And looking at what he's done and what he's said and how he's behaved, personally, I have my own ideas of what that is and things like that. But when Hillary started running again for nomination and actually won the nomination this time, um, I felt the same thing. Is like I knew her, but I didn't really support her as much as the other person. But it happens to the other person, Bernie Sanders didn't win, so he's not nominated. So I don't have somebody that I support. I supported Bernie because of the implications of he understood. He sounded like he understood, and it wasn't so much the idea that he's going to change the system or he's going to break the system or any of that, fight the power kind of stuff. I wanted somebody that I trusted, at least in the idea of I believe what they say. Like there's no major scandal about him lying. I went back all the way back in his history, and I never saw him change a stance. Like I never saw him fundamentally change something for the sake of personal anything. So I trusted that. I believed that if I were going to ever run for something, I would want that kind of credibility. I saw an ideal that I wished I had in what he represented, so I supported that. But when I explained all of these things to my friend, and he was like, well, I still want to vote for Donald Trump because I hate Hillary. And I'm like, okay, that's your prerogative. You're allowed to do that. This is a free country to vote for however you want. But I did believe he was informed. My friend was informed of, Trump is Trump and Hillary is Hillary. And I'm trying not to generalize too much because once you start generalizing, it's really easy to fall into a hole. But um, he minimized the concept of what the president was supposed to do. He when he heard about the scandals, when he saw the scandals, like, yeah, I believe those are true. I believe he's being honest when he is saying these horrible things. I think he's being, an idiot. I think he's doing this, but it's not as bad as pure corruption. Incompetence and racism and bigotry is not as bad as evilness. And so he was like minimizing the stuff against Trump because he just hated Hillary so much. And again, that's fine. Everyone has their own ideas. At least he understood that he was being biased. And again, bias is really the only thing we can go off of. Besides, you can't weigh both people objectively. You can't do that. You can try to, but they don't really explain things in a way that can be interpreted objectively. They say things that are emotionally charged, and unless they're being extremely boring, and then nobody wants to listen to them, so they don't say that kind of stuff. Which is one of the reasons I don't like politics in their format of sound clips and sound bites and who can get on the front page the most and stuff like that. Who can get the most airtime. So when I look at these things, when I look at the current election, even some of the past elections, because I haven't been in politics forever, but I see there's a major dislike for the current election compared to all the other ones. There was a lot of people that's like, well, yeah, I hate that person, but I hate him for this reason, and that's not like the reason I'm voting against them. I just don't like them, and I like that person better. This one's really, I don't really like that person, but I just hate this one so much. And so it's voting against somebody, not voting for somebody. So if you have a third-party candidate that has any chance of winning, they're going to get a huge amount of people jumping onto that because they hate both of the main candidates. So and I also watched an ad for one of the third-party candidates. It was a lady. I don't remember her name. I've never heard of her before. And her whole thing started with Hillary and Donald are both terrible. Vote for me. And she had her platform and stuff presented in the commercial. But I was like, I think they have to do that now. I think the only way that the established kind of format that the political system works in, like nominations and then voting and all those things, they have to say that they are just not these two people, and they have a chance of grabbing votes. And because right now, the only reason somebody, well, not the only reason, but more than 50% of the people voting for Trump are only voting for Trump because they think he's the only person that can beat Hillary. And more than 50% of the people that are voting for Hillary feel that the only reason they're going to vote are because they can beat the other person. So once you have a third party that's not as historically hated, or at least currently hated, they're going to get, they could potentially get that 50 and 50% and potentially win. And I don't think that's a good way of voting. I don't think that's a good way of having the democratic process work. The reason I say that, because the democratic process, the process of popular vote, of everyone has a say so that things are kept fair. And yeah, it's technically fair because it's a popularity contest. That's what a democracy is really run off of. But it's become broken. It's become founded in distrust for the system, in a disparity of just, we hate this. Like, why are we doing this? And that's why the younger people were trying to rally behind somebody that was different. That's why Trump has the supporters of the anti-government stuff, and Bernie had the supporters of the anti-government stuff. And they're very disruptive and they're very loud, but their message isn't necessarily wrong. Is the system has problems. And when your platform is, I am not part of the system, you're automatically going to grab people. So the dynamic between Hillary, which is effectively the establishment, and Trump, which is effectively the anti-establishment, you have that reason as well. But the polls have been more than 50% are just voting against a candidate. They don't like the person they're voting for. And it's really hard to fathom how bad it has to be that after hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars have been spent to find the most popular candidate for president, and more than 50% of the people only are going to vote for that person because they hate the other one so much. And this is not the most popular candidate anymore. This is the least unpopular candidate. And that bothers me, because when my friend asked me who I would vote for, I said, I'm not voting for someone. If I had the choice between Donald Trump and Hillary, I wouldn't be voting for somebody. I would be voting against somebody. Who do I dislike more? Because I don't like either of them. I don't think either of them have the message that I think the candidate should have. The ideology, the buzzwords just bother me, like temperament and are they qualified and things like that, because those are a matter of, you can't know. You don't know how they're going to behave in a certain situation. You don't know how they're going to be, because you have advisors and you have stuff that you just haven't talked about, because why would you talk about that in public? And there's a lot of unknown variables. Like, Hillary has experience as a politician. She has that. Trump doesn't. But that doesn't mean Trump doesn't have the ability to gain it, or that he wouldn't be good at it if he just practiced a while or had advisors to help him. But those are factors that are they're so important, but at the same time they've become buzzwords, and they've become like talking points between people to yell at each other. They're not discussed. So if I were to say, Hillary is really, really good at X and Trump is bad at it, I'm immediately going to be attacked for things that aren't even related to that, because they're going to bring in, like, well, what about X, Y, and Z? Why aren't you talking about that? I was like, well, it wasn't, those are factors, but I didn't have time to discuss that. I don't have time to think about that right now or talk about that right now. And that's another thing that's been on the news so much is there was just today, or technically yesterday, it's pretty early in the morning, one of the spokeswoman for Donald Trump blamed Obama for the death of Khan's son, pretty much, saying it was his policies or his promotion of the war, and Hillary Clinton was somehow involved as well. and that she voted for the war and that's why he died. And then it was later found out that, he died way before that, before either of them had any power over influence that you mentioned. And she apologized for having the timeline wrong, but did not apologize and, in fact, doubled down on it being Obama and Hillary's fault because they voted for the war and they supported the war and mishandled the veterans, which is a completely separate thing, and then said that Trump was being accused of killing Khan's son. And I look at that and I was like, that was not mentioned by anyone before she said it. That was not hinted at by anyone except for her. It wasn't even related. And when they pointed that out, she wouldn't correct herself. And they gave her several attempts to correct herself. And when I see that kind of behavior, and it's on both sides, is we did nothing wrong. Look at that over there. And sometimes it's, well, yeah, I did something wrong, but look at that over there anyway. And it's so hard to pin down information about what's good about these candidates or what's happening, because there's so much information and it's coming from a lot of different sources, and I don't know what's credible, and all I know is what's not credible because of the past behaviors of certain people. I don't care if you're associated with a candidate I don't like. I don't care if you have had past ties with X, Y, and Z, unless those past ties have been obviously influential to your behavior. Like, oh, I was pro this, and then I started working for this company that is very, very anti that. So I like that day switched, and then as soon as I stopped working there, I switched back. That kind of behavior bothers me because it shows a lack of integrity. But when you don't have that information, or that information is not readily available and hard to find, or that information is being twisted by somebody for an agenda, it's like, oh, look at that person, how horrible they are because of this. Is that really what that information means? I need to look it up. There's so much data I have to analyze, and it's so hard because it's becoming more and more draining. Like, you really, really want to know something, but every time you have to wade through like 500 different articles, all saying roughly the same thing with different spins on it, and none of them are actually explaining what any of it means. They're just saying, Donald Trump is a vampire, or Hillary Clinton is the devil, and it's just, people hate everywhere. And then the other side is they can do no wrong, so the love, deifying people. And I want an objective source, and it's very difficult to find a source that isn't blatantly, or I guess not blatantly, but when you really, really look at it, it's obviously for or against something. It's just, when you look at something and it starts with so and so is a demagogue, or so and so the twisted parasitical like blah 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 blah. The article starts with that, like that's the first sentence or that's the first paragraph, and it's just like so and so the filthy cowardice, small-handed, whatever, or Hillary the crooked, lying piece of whatever. And you look at that, it's like these are news articles. They're not news articles. These are opinion pieces, and you have to wade through that, and you have to look. And there's hundreds and hundreds every day, and I'm trying to, like, I'm not reading every single one because there's just no time. But I can't imagine, like, somebody that's just watching this as like I already like Hillary or I already like Trump, and they're like, oh, that person hates them, I'm just gonna, everything they say is wrong, or that person likes them, everything I'm gonna listen to. And when I think about that, it's like, how twisted is your reality? Because, like, it's not even necessarily your fault because you're being misinformed, and because you just don't have the time or the focus or the care. And you look at something as like, oh, this is a reputable source. I accept this source as valid. I'm going to listen to what they say. And then they're just lying to you. And because I've been trying to find a source that's unbiased, and it's on both sides, because I dislike both candidates enough that I'm not trying to find something to make one lose. And it's the worst kind of situation because there's no winner in this. If you have a support for Hillary and she wins, okay, cool, you get what you want. If Trump wins and you supported him, you get what you want, probably. And I look at this and I'm like, you don't want them, you just don't want the other person in. So your win is, yeah, I'll take the grenade, but I'm getting rid of, another grenade. So I'm still having the problem. Like, I didn't want this. It's still bad for me, but at least I didn't have this other one that's worse. And in your mind it's worse. But right now I don't, like, I'll never endorse somebody that deprives people of basic human rights. That's my most basic idea of what a president should do is they should uphold at least the most basic human rights of people. That's why I won't ever support Trump, because he wants to take those away. And there's all hundreds of other reasons, but when I look at Hillary, I see her as dishonest. I see her as opportunistic. I see her as a very, very at her core politician, and I don't like people that are as their profession and as their personality and all the things that they do focused entirely for their political success. I don't like that because I consider that dishonest. I consider that opportunistic. It's like, if I can benefit from this in my job, I'm going to take advantage of it. And I don't like that. And I'm not saying that she's evil, and I'm not saying Trump is evil. I just think that they're both extremely bad at what they're trying to become, which is president. I don't think either of them should be president. And when my friend asked, who would I vote for? It's like, I wouldn't vote for either of them. I would vote against the other. And that idea, the most powerful person in the United States, technically, in position. You could say Congress is more powerful, but they're not an individual, they're a group of people, so they can be swayed easier. But it's just, it's kind of sickening that it's gotten so bad. Excuse me. And I had something to eat before I did this. I shouldn't have done that, but it's just every time I look at this, every day, every new thing that's popped up, the hacked emails, the comments about insulting somebody's family or anything. If you don't like them, then everything they do is garbage. If you love them, they can do no wrong. And I've seen it again and again and again. And it's becoming very tiresome because it makes finding information very difficult. It's kind of an uphill trudge of why does it even matter? There's 100 times more people that just don't care and they're just going to vote for whatever. And I look at that as like, I'm one person and I do have a vote and I do have my opinions and I do have, a person that I would vote for if I'm going to vote. But at the same time, I know that there are literally millions of people that are going to vote off of significantly less information, significantly more misinformation. Reading the ads as information gathering is bad, like really bad, because the ads promote themselves as wonderful and their opponents as garbage. That's what the ads do. So you have to look at the articles, and the articles are written by people that either support or dislike one of the candidates. So you have to go through even more information. Where do you find it? The data, the journalists that don't have that agenda. But there's so few, and it's impossible to really, really know before you get into it. So you get into an article and you're reading it, and it's like, am I being misinformed? And that uphill battle of does it even matter? Emotionally draining. My energies are just like, what am I even doing? Like, I try to talk to people about it. Certain people are just like, don't talk to me about this. They either hate my guts the minute they find out that I'm not pro or anti something, or they're unwilling to discuss something in a reasonable tone. They're just like, I'm going to stand on this soapbox and lecture you. There are some people that are very, like my friend, who disagreed with what I said, but didn't necessarily dislike what I said. They're like, okay, it's articulate, but I still disagree. It's awesome. But there's so few that I can find, and it makes me sound kind of like, oh, I'm smarter or I'm better or whatever. I'm not. I just really like this is a very specific focus. This is a very specific kind of analysis for this. Presidential elections are generally run off of emotion, and I'm trying to avoid the emotion because the emotion has been smokescreening a lot of the important stuff. More so in this one than the previous ones because there are so many more lives at stake. There's uh, so many more things that could go wrong in this election, and coming from the election, I mean, going into the new presidency. And I look at all of these things and I say the stakes are higher, and there's a lot more hate in this election than any other one that I've seen. The Obama one had a lot of racists, egregiously racist people against him because he's dark skinned and because of his name. Uh, that was a big thing, but it didn't really have the cultural backing because you can't really say I dislike him because he's black. You had to say I dislike him because he's not American, or I dislike him because he's Muslim, or I dislike him because he's not an American. Again, for some reason, that one kept coming up, and it came up like 2 days ago again from a Republican congressman um, saying, did he even go to Harvard? What was his status before he went to college and all these things? Why is that coming up again? Like, is that still being talked about? Before that, I hadn't heard anything except by Donald Trump. I hadn't heard anything from anyone talking about an investigation or somebody looking into it. And then somebody said that they're questioning his college records and saying that he's a Muslim person that was just brought in, and I don't understand this. Where is this coming from? And that kind of stuff just sideswipes and just like, why is this here? I need to look into this now, and it's taking more of my time. So it's a very confusing, very time consuming endeavor, and I guess I do have the time to look into a lot more than some people, but and I have the focus of wanting to, but I can't figure out most of it because there's a lot of things that are being said that I cannot find the source of. And I mean, I could watch the original interview and they say, well, yeah, I saw an article over here, or there's data over here, and I have to go and find that data. And then I look at it like this is like 500 pages long, or it's from this other thing that's not actually saying what they said. It's like, well, where did they glean this from? What section of this? So I read the whole thing like 3 times. It's like, where is the data that they said was from this? And it's mostly Trump. It's mostly Trump saying things that I cannot verify, but Hillary has said a few things about interviews she's had. You can't look up the interview properly, and there's investigations that are quoting things. And like, okay, I want to look up the investigation. How valid is that data? But you can't really look that up yet because it's ongoing, and it's very frustrating for me. And I know a lot of other people are really frustrated, and I think that's why there's going to be a lot of angry people no matter who wins. Because I voted against that person. Why did they win? Is going to happen. And I'm really worried that this is going to cause problems, a lot of problems. So I've been talking for almost 30 minutes, so I should probably end this. So I hope this was entertaining. I hope this was informative. I hope that you liked the video. Not like literally click the. I don't do any of that stuff, but I mean I hope that you enjoyed the video. So that's it. I hope to see you in the next video, and peace.